Welcome to The Marketing Behind Rapid Growth, the podcast where we explore the strategies, decisions, and growth engines behind some of the world's most successful technology companies. Today we're talking about Behiiv. Picture this. It's 2017. A guy named Tyler Denk is sitting in his parents' basement. He's got a mechanical engineering degree that isn't being used. He's got about $120,000 in student debt. And he's got, by his own account, roughly $2.50 in his checking account. No job offers, no safety net, just a laptop and some self-taught coding skills. Then a friend calls with an odd offer, $3,000 to build a custom share button for a small daily email called Morning Brew. Denk takes the gig. He teaches himself WordPress and email code, pulling all-nighters until 3 in the morning. And that one freelance favor turns into something much bigger. It turns into a front-row seat to one of the great media growth stories of the last decade. This is the story of what Denk learned watching Morning Brew scale, and how he turned that education into Behiiv, a company that dared to compete with Substack by refusing to play Substack's game. Let's get into it. Part 1. The education. Denk didn't just build a button. He became Morning Brew's second employee. Over the next few years, he built much of the company's technology from scratch. The content management system, the referral program, the ad-serving tools. He watched Morning Brew grow from a small list into a newsletter with millions of subscribers. And in 2020, he watched it sell to Business Insider for around $75 million. But here's the part of the story that matters most. While Denk was building Morning Brew's infrastructure, he kept running into the same frustrating truth. There was no single platform that did what a serious media business actually needed. Ambitious creators were duct taping together a stack of disconnected tools. WordPress for the website, MailChimp for email, some plugin for referrals, a spreadsheet, inevitably, for ad sales. Morning Brew had been forced to build its own software because nothing on the market tied the pieces together. Denk saw the white space. What if you packaged that entire growth and monetization engine into one platform? Not just for Morning Brew, for everyone. Part 2. Betting against peak newsletter. Here's what makes the timing of this story interesting. When Denk and his co-founders Benjamin Hargett and Jake Hurd started building Behiiv on nights and weekends, the smart money in the room was saying email was over. Intuit had just agreed to buy MailChimp for around $12 billion. To a lot of investors, that deal didn't signal opportunity. It signaled that the category had already matured, consolidated, and priced itself for corporate marketers, not scrappy independent creators. Meanwhile, the exciting story in the newsletter world belonged to Substack. Substack had just raised at a valuation of roughly $650 million, and it had made starting a newsletter almost frictionless. But Denk looked closely at what Substack actually was, and what he saw was a social network for writers, not an operating system for a media business. Substack owned the audience relationship. It cross-promoted other publications inside its own ecosystem. It optimized heavily for paid subscriptions, and it took a standing 10% cut of a creator's revenue, forever. For a hobbyist writing on the side, that trade was totally fine, but for an entrepreneur trying to build a real 7-figure media brand, Substack's analytics were thin, its automation was limited, and its advertising options were basically non-existent. It had a ceiling, a low one. So Behiiv's founders made a strategic decision that would define the entire company. They weren't going to try to beat Substack on simplicity. They were going to win on scalability. The mental model they landed on was simple to say and hard to execute. Be the Shopify of the creator economy. Open infrastructure. White label. A platform where creators owned their audience, their brand, and their revenue, outright, with no landlord taking a cut. Part 3. The cap table as a marketing move. Building the first version of Behiiv took about 10 months of nights and weekends. Denk was still holding down a full-time job leading product at Google the entire time. He's talked about living with a low hum of dread the whole way through. The fear that some better-funded competitor would ship a native referral tool overnight and simply erase Behiiv's edge before it ever launched. When the team finally had a working prototype, they raised a seed round of about $2.6 million. And this is where the story gets strategically interesting, because the fundraise itself became a marketing decision. Instead of filling the round exclusively with traditional venture firms, Behiiv deliberately set aside room for strategic angels. Specifically, people who already ran large, successful newsletters. The thinking was that these backers wouldn't just write checks, they would become distribution, and more importantly, they would become proof. That bet paid off almost immediately. One early backer, someone running a large, well-known newsletter, moved a 6-figure subscriber list onto Behiiv's rough beta version. This wasn't a favor. It was a live stress test in public with real stakes. When the platform held up under a heavy daily send, it sent a signal to every other serious creator watching. Behiiv could carry a real business, not just a hobby project. Part 4. When the product becomes the marketing department. Over the next few years, Behiiv climbed to roughly $15 million in annual recurring revenue and kept climbing. But here's the strategic insight underneath that growth curve. Behiiv never had the budget to out-advertise the legacy players in the space. So instead of trying, the team wired growth directly into the product itself. The first move was almost contrarian. Behiiv inverted the category's basic economics. The team bet that subscription fatigue was real and that the big advertising budgets sitting on the sidelines were essentially locked out of the newsletter world entirely. So Behiiv launched a native ad network. It pooled inventory across all of its newsletters so that national and B2B advertisers could buy against it at scale. And instead of only charging creators a monthly fee, Behiiv started paying them. For a meaningful number of publishers, the platform flipped from a cost into a revenue line. The second move was building viral loops directly into the product. Features like Boosts, a marketplace where creators pay each other for recommendations, plus built-in referral tools, rewarded creators for promoting one another, and every free-tier newsletter carried a small built-on Behiiv mark at the bottom. Think about what that means mechanically. Newsletters are, by nature, shared constantly. So every single send from every single creator on the platform quietly doubled as an advertisement for Behiiv itself. The product didn't need a marketing budget to spread. It spread because of how it was built. Part 5. The founder as the brand. But if you ask what the single most distinctive growth lever was, it wasn't a feature. It was Denk himself. He leaned hard into founder-led marketing, cutting straight through the polished corporate noise that surrounds most software companies. He launched his own newsletter on Behiiv called Big Desk Energy and grew it into 6 figures of subscribers. He built the company in public, sharing real revenue numbers, real product roadmaps, and the genuinely unglamorous reality of scaling a remote team. When a hosting provider abruptly knocked Behiiv's servers offline while Denk was traveling, he didn't hide it. He narrated the scramble to fix it, in real time, publicly. And when the company suffered the sudden loss of its CTO, Andrew Platkin, who had also been a longtime mentor to Denk, he wrote openly about what that loss meant for the team. That kind of transparency builds something most software companies never manage to earn. Users stopped seeing Behiiv as a faceless vendor. They started seeing it as a scrappy underdog worth rooting for. And by consistently amplifying every creator who switched over and spotlighting their wins, Behiiv made its own momentum feel almost inevitable, like something you'd want to be part of rather than something being sold to you. Part 6. What this story actually teaches. So what's the strategic takeaway here? A few things stand out. First, counter-positioning creates instant clarity. Substack's model was built around a 10% revenue cut inside a closed ecosystem. Behiiv answered that directly with no cut on subscription revenue and an open platform. By naming specifically what the market leader would not do, Behiiv claimed the most commercially ambitious slice of the market almost by default. Second, marketing should shape product architecture, not just describe it after the fact. Behiiv's growth didn't come from clever copywriting. It came from features engineered specifically to acquire customers. The referral tools, the recommendation marketplace, the ad network. When product and marketing are designed as one system instead of 2 separate departments, the product itself becomes the channel. Third, founder-led authenticity is genuinely hard to copy. In a world full of polished messaging and increasingly generic content, trust is a scarce resource. By showing the messy, real version of building a company, Denk earned a kind of loyalty that competitors simply can't replicate with a bigger ad budget. People who feel invested in a founder's story don't just tolerate rough edges. They forgive them, and they tell other people to come check it out. Fourth, consolidation suppresses churn. Creators are exhausted by tool sprawl. By expanding into website building, deeper analytics, and podcast hosting, Behiiv steadily raised the cost of leaving. When your entire operation lives inside one platform, walking away becomes genuinely painful. And that's when retention takes care of itself. Conclusion. Behiiv's rise is a good reminder that conventional wisdom is often just wrong, or at least incomplete. Email wasn't dead. The market wasn't saturated. The infrastructure was simply broken, and it was waiting for a team with the technical depth and the marketing nerve to rebuild it from the ground up. By refusing to ship just another writing tool and instead building something closer to an operating system for modern media companies, Behiiv proved something bigger than a product-market fit story. It showed that pairing a genuinely creator-friendly product with transparent, narrative-driven marketing doesn't just win market share. Done well, it can grow the entire market. This was the marketing behind rapid growth. See you in the next episode.